I parked to the right of that picture.
As I recall, that building runs pretty much north-south, is that right?
Yes.
So you parked it to the south side of that doorway?
Correct.
Okay. And then you pressed the door and walked in on the passenger side of the vehicle, is that right?
Correct.
And that's why you didn't see Rob right away?
Yes.
And you saw the glass in front of the truck after you entered the shop, is that right?
Correct.
So we're also clear, when you entered, you called 911, is that right?
Correct.
And you spoke to someone from 911 operator, is that right?
Correct.
Were they the ones who were giving you instructions with regards to attempting to do chest compressions?
Correct.
And when you arrived, what position was Rob's body in when you first arrived?
Laying on the ground.
Was he laying
Flat.
on his back or was he on his side?
He was kind of both. His legs were almost flat, but his shoulders and head were somewhat leaning on the tire.
Okay. And so then once you entered and you were talking to them, they were wanting you to do compressions, and they had you roll his body over flat. Is that right?
No, I just took his body from somewhat leaning on the tire to just flat.
Okay. So you slid the body?
Correct.
Okay. Rather than rolling it, you slid it.
Correct.
Okay. And then once his chest was on his back was flat on the ground, that's when you began compression.
Correct.
And that's when you saw the blood coming out of his mouth.
Correct.
All right. So photos. Showing you page 2 of People's Exhibit 1. This photo of Rob laying on the ground on the concrete floor of the warehouse building, that was after you had moved his body, is that right?
Correct.
When you first arrived, was his the arm closest to the front tire, was that the part that was up against the wheel?
Yeah, that shoulder was more on the wheel.
And then you slid the opposite shoulder where his arm is towards the refrigerator out to get his body flat. Is that right?
I scooped him to move him. I didn't just drag him by his arm or anything.
No,
I cradled him to try to move to get his shoulders, I believe is what they said, to get his shoulders flat onto the ground.
So you put your hands underneath his shoulders and then...
I put a hand on his head and another arm under his shoulders to move him.
And then moved him and got it to where his shoulders were flat.
Correct.
Oh. So this photo is not how he was originally when you first arrived. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And referencing photo, referencing page 2 of People's Exhibit 1. I believe you indicated that some of the persons that were working or had been working in the shop were tired when you were there. Is that right?
I'm sorry, did you say they're tired?
Retired.
Oh, yeah, 2 people retired that I originally started with.
Okay. And that would be, I think you indicated, a person by the name of John Seaman.
Correct.
And the other one was
Dennis Stankovich.
Stingovich. Mm-hmm. And how long after you started there in 2012 was it that they actually retired?
Close to a year.
Okay, so you've been there about a year and then they retired?
Correct.
Okay. So that would have been somewhere around about between 2012, 2013 time frame.
Yeah, within that, they both retired at different times. It wasn't at the same time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no further questions at this time. Thank you very much.
Reread.
Mr. Ware, you were asked about where you parked your work truck. Did you also have another vehicle at the scene?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what vehicle did you have at the scene?
It was a 2003 Grand Am.
And where was that vehicle parked at?
It would have been parked to the right or to the south of that truck.
Why was that vehicle parked at that location?
It was parked because I was letting my other coworker, Corey Hamilton, was driving that at the time.
I had asked you previously about signage of BNSF. How would one know when you're driving up that that's a BNSF shop?
You would someone would have to tell you. There's no signs there.
Do you know if there's any small parking bumpers, I guess, that have signage on it?
Yes, there was, but it's spray painted, so it's intermittent on what kind of condition that's in.
But other than that, there's no signs.
There's no signs.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Terry.
You mentioned there's no signs on the building itself, right?
Correct.
And is there actually an address for that location on the building itself?
I do not believe so.
And when you called 911, did you give them the physical address of where you were located?
I believe so.
Did you tell them what the address was?
Yes.
Okay. What is the address at that location?
It's on Goodrick Road. The actual address, I don't remember what it is.
Okay. Did you know it at the time what the actual address was?
No, I had to look it up.
When you say you had to look it up, when was it that you looked it up?
When I was on the phone inside our office on a bulletin board has our address on it, so I just had to walk in there and read it off to her.
So while you were in there, you were able to read off the address, but you didn't know it without reading it off of the board
Correct.
in your own office, right?
Correct.
Now, you also mentioned there are a number of other shops in that area. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Are those shops along the same line, that north-south facing building as yours?
Yes.
Are there different addresses for those, if you know?
I believe it's just suite numbers or differences between everything.
And when you told to the 911 operator, did you tell them what suite you were in?
Correct.
And as a result of that, they were able to get to your, the police got to your location?
I was outside waiting for them.
Okay. The door was open by then, right?
Correct.
Okay, so they could see, and obviously your truck was parked in front, right?
Correct.
Okay, so there was at least 2 BNSF trucks that were obvious, right?
Mine was. His was inside. So.
Let me ask you this, do you know whether or not there's anywhere that anyone could locate that building address as being BNSF?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Smith? Just step down, Mr. Ward. Thank you. Smith?
We'll call Ryan Galindo.
Sir, could you step up to the podium for me, please? Raise your right hand and we'll swear you in.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up, have a seat, please. Good morning, sir. Can you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
It's Ryan Galindo, Galindo.
Your witness counseling.
How are you currently employed?
I'm employed by the state of California,
Back in 2014, who did you work for?
the BNSF Railway.
Now, back in 2014, what were your duties or your job title?
I was a rapid responder in Tehachapi.
Can you just describe what that means?
Just a mechanical responder for responding to trains that would break down en route.
How long did you work as a rapid responder?
3 years.
What were the years of your employment as a rapid responder?
The end of 2012, I believe, to September of 2016.
And when you worked as a rapid responder, what were your duty hours?
It was 12-hour shifts, 3 on, 3 off. And we rotated from working day shift to night shift every 3 months.
In the time frame of August 2014, how many regular rapid responders worked in Tehachapi?
4.
Do you recall the 3 other regular rapid responders besides yourself in August of 2014?
Dennis Stankovich, Sean Ware, and Corey Hamilton.
Do you know a person by the name of Robert Limon?
I do.
Do you remember when you first met Robert Limon?
Yes, I do.
If you could just give an approximate time frame.
It was the first week that I had started up in Tehachapi.
Is that in 2012?
I believe I was misspoken on that. I believe it was actually 2013, as I was only there for 3 years. So that would have been around the end of August, first part of September in 2013.
Now, how did you come to meet Robert Limon?
Just through work, he actually trained me for the first couple weeks that I was up there.
How often did you work with him after that training period?
Very sporadic, not very often.
Did you ever socialize with him?
No.
Now, based on that training period, did you get to know him personally?
Not really.
What type of worker was he when you trained with him?
A dedicated worker.
I'm taking you to August 17, 2014. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Earlier in the day, do you recall if you saw Robert?
Yes, I did.
Where did you see Robert?
I can't say that I specifically saw him. I saw one of the responder trucks drive through town after we had gotten back into town
And at that time, where were you living?
in Tehachapi.
So when you saw a rapid responder truck, you thought it was the person that was on duty that day?
Yes.
Did you know at that time that Robert Limon was the person on duty that day?
No, I did not.
This is information you found out later?
Yes.
It's been a while, but do you remember the approximate time?
It was about 6:15 p.m.
And where did you see the truck at?
Going down Tehachapi Boulevard past the Burger King.
Were you notified that Robert Limon had been killed?
Yes.
Do you recall how?
My wife had told me she had received a phone call.
Now, after you received that phone call, what did you do?
I went down to the shop.
Now, when you got there, what did you see?
Just police tape and police cars.
Did you speak with law enforcement?
I did.
Do you recall who you spoke with?
No.
Did you try to provide law enforcement as much information as you knew in relation to Robert Limon?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall what type of questions they asked you?
No, I don't recall the exact questioning.
Do you recall whether or not they asked you if Robert had any problems with any people?
No.
Were you aware of any?
No.
Nothing further.
So Terry Croft?
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Galindo.
Morning.
Mr. Galindo, you've never met Sabrina Limon?
No.
You never saw her up in Tehachapi at any time when you were working there?
No.
Now, you indicated that you saw a truck, BNSF truck, driving down Tehachapi Boulevard at approximately 6:15 p.m. Is that right?
Yes.
But you didn't actually see the driver of the truck.
No.
Did you see the number of the truck? Or they have distinctive numbers on it?
They do, but I did not.
Okay. So when you saw this truck, you thought later when you spoke to the police it might have been Roth. Is that right?
Yes.
You're aware that Sean Ware was also driving a truck that evening, a BNSF truck.
Yes.
Did you consider that it might have been Sean Ware's truck and Sean driving it you saw rather than Rob?
I did not consider that, but it is possible.
Now, you'd indicated on direct that your wife received a phone call. Is that right?
Yes.
And then, who was it that she received the phone call from, if you recall?
She received a phone call from the Bakersfield supervisor's wife.
So, and can you tell me approximately what time was it that you went down to the warehouse?
I can't recall exact time. I could only guess.
If you can give us your best recollection of what time it was that your wife received this phone call, someone in Bakersfield?
My guess would have been around 7:30 p.m.
So your best recollection is somewhere around about 7:30 p.m. And approximately what time did you actually get to the shop that evening, if you recall?
It would have only taken me about 15 minutes.
And do you recall who the officer was that you spoke to at the scene?
No, I do not.
Be safe to say, outside of your contact with Rob at work, you and he never socialized outside of your work. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So you didn't know anything about what his life away from work was. Is that right?
That's right.
So when you were asked if you knew of anybody who might wish to do harm to Rob, the only thing you could think of or would be even aware of anything would be people you work with, right? Who might have had trouble with Rob. Right?
I don't recall being asked that.
You don't recall being asked if you knew of anybody who had any problems with Rob?
I do not recall being asked that.
1 second. Do you don't recall the police asking you that, or you don't recall Mr. Smith asking you that, the prosecutor this morning?
I don't recall the police asking me that.
Very well. Mr. Terry, if you'd like to proceed on that angle, go ahead.
I may approach you.
Please.
Directing your attention, sir, to the third paragraph down right here. Look. review that? Does that refresh your recollection that you were asked whether or not you knew of any problems that Rob had at work or with anyone?
Yes,
And you indicated to the police at that time you didn't know of any, is that right?
correct.
Would it be safe to say your only frame of reference with regards to any issues Rob would have had would have been with regards to work,
Yes,
since you didn't really socialize with him outside of work, right?
correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Smith? Ms. Sept?
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Smith?
People call Robert Garnis.
Should you step up to the podium, raise your right hand and be sworn?
You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Sir, come on up, have a seat, please. Good morning, sir. Can you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
Robert Garnas, Garnas.
Thank you. Your witness, counselor.
How are you currently employed?
BNSF Railway.
How long have you worked for BNSF Railway?
14 years.
Your current duties?
A road foreman at engines, a management position.
Just describe what that means.
I'm responsible for maintaining engineer certification, responding to service interruptions up on the Tehachapis, and operations testing.
Did you have those same duties in August of 2014?
I did.
Did you ever work up at the shop in Tehachapi on Goodrick Road or Goodrick Drive?
I did not. My office is in Bakersfield.
Did you ever work in conjunction with those individuals?
I did.
How so?
During service interruptions, mechanical issues with locomotives or trains, I would go up there and assist or work on a plan to get things moving.
So the individuals that worked in the shop in Tehachapi were rapid responders.
Yeah, rapid responders. They were located up there in a position that would be able to respond to mechanical issues a little bit quicker than us in Bakersfield.
And if there was an issue on the way to Tehachapi involving a train, they would come to the train, you would come from Bakersfield.
That's correct.
You were in charge when you got there, though?
Yes.
Now, do you recall when you met Robert Limon? If you could just give an approximate time frame.
On the particular day, is that, or just?
Just before. Do you know when you first met Robert Limon?
Well, I've met him on several service interruptions prior to.
So you had worked with him previously.
Yes.
Do you recall? Let's start with August 17, 2014, the day he died.
Yes.
Do you recall how long prior to that date you had worked with him?
I had been in that position for approximately a year in management. So I'd worked with him throughout that year on other service calls.
Can you give an estimate how often you would work with him?
It varies. It could have been maybe 20, 30 times.
Did you ever socialize with him out of work?
No.
Now, in those 20 to 30 times that you worked with him, what was his demeanor? What was he like as an employee?
He was an excellent responder, very helpful, always friendly, willing to, just knowledgeable and a great guy to work with.
Specifically, August 17, 2014, did you see Robert Limon that day?
I did.
Where did you see him at?
We were on a service interruption call. That's a station called Cable Crossover. It's just west of Tehachapi.
Do you recall what type of service interruption it was?
There was a mechanical issue with a locomotive. I believe it was dynamic brakes, but mechanical issue. I arrived to the train before Robert did. Walked through the power and found out what the problem was. Met him on the power and let him know that the train was fixed and it was ready to continue to Bakersfield.
Now, August 17, 2014, do you remember what time you just described occurred? Just any time during that day?
Probably between 4 and 5.
Did you speak with Robert about anything beyond fixing the locomotive?
We talked about the new terminal manager that we had in Bakersfield and how he was like in his new position. He was previously a guy that was up on the hill a lot, and this individual changed positions and went into Bakersfield. So we were talking about that transition of his new duties.
Recall anything else you spoke about?
That was
How
it.
long was the conversation?
It was just a few minutes after the train had left. And then I did tell Robert that I was going to continue to Bakersfield and do some operations testing on the way back to Bakersfield. And we parted ways.
Did you see where Robert drove?
I didn't.
Now, were you notified of Robert's death that day?
I was that evening as I was nearing my house in Bakersfield. I received a phone call and immediately turned around and drove back up towards Tehachapi.
Who called you?
I believe it was a fellow coworker, another road foreman.
You said you returned to Tehachapi?
Yes.
And where you're on Goodrick Drive, what did you see?
We parked out. I parked outside on the street there, and I didn't go into the building or near it. There was police personnel on site when I got there, so I just kind of stood by outside and knew that I would probably need to give a statement, being that I was working with him prior to the incident.
Do you recall which detective you spoke to?
I don't.
Do you recall the length of the interview?
Just maybe 5 minutes or 5-10 minutes.
Did you attempt to provide them as much information as you could to assist with the investigation?
I did.
Do you remember if they inquired whether or not you were aware if Robert had any arguments or issues in or out of work?
I don't know if that was asked or not. I don't know of any issues that he had. We'd never talked about personal life. It was more railroad and service interruption related.
As it related to the railroad at that time in August 2014, were you aware of any issues that Robert had?
No. So he always seemed very happy, big smile.
That's brother.
Sherry Cross.
Good morning, Mr. Carter.
Good morning.
Now, you indicated that it was approximately sometime between 4 and 5 p.m. that you actually interacted on that day with Robert. Is that right?
Yeah, it was somewhere around there in that late evening time, I believe.
Do you know how many times? Well, let me ask you this: was Robert permanently assigned to Tehachapi? If you know.
I don't think so. No, he was a relief responder, I believe.
And that's for when somebody who normally works at Tehachapi needs a day off. Is that right?
Yeah.
So they
days
would-
off or vacation.
So someone would volunteer to take their spot to get, say, overtime if they worked at another location. Is that right?
Yes, there was typically it's normally the same guys that fill those vacancies.
In other words, there are normal guys who would come in and work as relief responders for the normal responders assigned to a particular location. Is that right?
That's correct.
And on how many occasions had you actually been to the NSF warehouse or shop in Tehachapi?
When I first got the job, my co-worker took me up there to show me the responder building. Maybe that time and maybe one other time. I didn't ever really spend a bunch of time up there.
And did you know what the actual physical address was at that location?
No.
You just knew how to get there?
Yeah, and still.
Still don't know how to get there, but don't know the address?
Yes, exactly.
Had you ever met any of Mr. Limon's family?
I had not.
You never met his wife?
No.
Never met his children?
No.
And it would be safe to say that your only real interaction were the times that you came into contact with him at work. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you guys never talked about your personal lives?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Smith. Step down, Mr. Garnis. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, I'll leave it up to you. You want to call your next witness now or at 1:30? 1:30. Any objection by the jury to getting a 7-minute head start on lunch? Hearing none, we'll see you back at 1:30, please. Remember not to form or express any opinion or discuss the case.